I rummaged around my shop. I had to go buy this half-inch coupling nut, but I did have a couple old half-inch bolts from projects long past. But I think a better choice would be these two that I have, just fractions or small pieces of a bolt, and they're half-inch thread, and I think these two will be perfect. Cut this piece of plywood, and I have these cleats on it, and it slides over the table of the drill press nice and steady, and this hole should be perfectly in alignment with the quill. We'll find out. I realigned the table with the quill, and I have a 31/64 bit in here, skosh less than half-inch for this half-inch bolt. For the last part of the drill, I put a sacrificial piece underneath to get a cleaner hole. It's a tight fit, but with a wrench on it, thread it in, and it seems plumb in both directions. There it is coming out, and I think I'm going to lock it in place with this washer nut thing on the top and a traditional nut on the back side. And I happen to have a washer that fits in the opening in my drill press table, but there's not a lot of room to spare. Well, I just discovered the opening in my drill press table is a little bit forward of the actual quill. So the washer I have under here doesn't fit in the opening. If I shim it, I've got these very thin pieces of MDF just to lift it up so that the washer clears the opening in the drill press table. You can see these line up still perfectly. So I think I'm going to forego the washer. No, I don't think this piece is under a huge amount of force, but time will tell. Well, I spent about an hour cutting this coupling. I think you can see by the look at it how I cut it. I cut barbs into each of the 6 corners. I did it completely freehand with a rotary tool and a metal cutting disc on it. And I got them all more or less coplanar and looking pretty good. I did it freehand, lining it up against the square. And it's not perfect, but I think it's good enough for what I need to do. So this is how the drive end came out for my makeshift lathe. I put a couple notches on one of the corners for reference, and the little point is in the middle, and the idea is the point will help you center exactly where you're supposed to be. You can drive it in, mark your reference point, and hopefully have a repeatable, sustainable, etc. Yeah, this came out better than I thought it would. I think it's going to work. We'll see. So this is the setup. I have this point down low, and this drive chuck is up into the chuck of the drill press as far as it can go, and I've got about almost 6 inches of usable distance between here and here. I could probably get this a little lower into the board if I wanted to be creative, and there's a bunch of threads up here that I don't need, and I certainly don't need such a large locking nut. I could probably pick up over a ½ inch up here should I need it, and maybe a little bit, 1/4 inch or so down there. But this will suit my needs. So unfortunately with my crappy drill press, every time I move the table I run the risk of misalignment. So I had this all the way down the bottom, and I just have to now spend the time to get these lined up. I don't have any wood turning tools. I don't know a lot about owning a lathe, but I have a lot of files which I think will do what I need to do. So this lathe actually worked pretty well. The biggest issue I had was on this point here. This kept digging into the bottom of the piece, and I eventually ended up putting a T-nut in there so that it was a metal on metal junction, and that seemed to at least mitigate the problem a little bit, but you can see the cone is worn into the bottom of that. If I get underneath this, pop that out of there. See how it's discolored from the heat. This thing got very hot. And you can see how it's been worn away by the dome, by the point here. And boy, you can see how hot this thing really did get. It even charred the wood in here. One thing I did not do is I didn't polish this tip. I just sharpened it to a point on the bench grinder. And in retrospect, I think I should have taken some time to put a little finer finish on it. Also, I think some of these have a sharper point. I don't know what the angle is here, but it's not a very sharp point. But it seemed as though this point ground its way and burned its way into the end stock. So I'm going to have to give this part of the lathe a little bit more thought should I decide to go forward with this project. Another thought I had is the bearing size R8ZZ fits pretty well on a 1/2 inch threaded shaft. And that's what these guys are here. And I could take one or two of these and make some sort of a live end down here. So should I resurrect this again for another project, I could try polishing this. I could also try grinding the point to be a blunter angle, meaning less pointy. And I could try to make something like a live center down here. Well, whether it's your first time here or you come here on occasions, or even if you're a regular, I appreciate you coming by and checking out what I'm doing. As always, any feedback, always appreciated, and I look forward to catching up with you guys on the next one.